Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. This is where right and left can come and try to be reasonable. There was a big move today, but I think a lot of us missed what the move was really about. Trump and one of his longtime economic advisors, Stephen Moore, you've seen him on the show a bunch of times. You're going to see him tonight. We got the man in the house. He literally co-wrote the book on Trumponomics. So he comes out today. They got all these charts. It's a big presentation. The president's there moving the slides around for him. The job numbers under Biden in the last 2 years were way off. And I see a lot of coverage suggesting that those numbers were fake. Now, I don't think Stephen Moore said that. He can speak for himself in a moment. The president suggested that he thinks the numbers were off on purpose. Most see this as a way of what? Most of the coverage was Trump is justifying firing the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor and Statistics because of his recent revisions on the jobs numbers. I don't think so. I don't think it's so much about the firing. And I don't think it's about fakery. I think it's a clear sign that the president is very aware that none of the noise that dominates the dialogue, not the gates, Russiagate, Epstein-gate, lawfare, warfare, the Middle East, Russia. I'm not saying these things don't matter. They certainly matter to me, but none of it will be what drives the only thing that matters to the president's legacy, which is the midterms. Why would the midterms define the legacy? Because if he doesn't have the balance of power, he will never be able to do any of the things that he thinks he needs to do to get to where he wants to be. And the balance of power in the midterms is going to come down to exactly what he was trying to define as an issue today: jobs. Elections, especially first cycle midterms, are referenda on presidents. And the main metric is not what drives the media. It's not what drives social media. But it is what drives middle America's wallet. The balance of power of the rest of the Trump administration is going to come down to how you feel at the polls about two decisions. I'll call them tariffing and terrifying, okay? I don't say immigration. Huge issue, huge win for the president because of what he achieved on the southern border, okay? I say terrifying because of the tone, the reaction, and the manner and sweep of deportation efforts that has been a cause of fear and outrage all over the country, and also to farms, restaurants, parks. And the reason that they went after Biden on jobs was to lower the bar for comparison at the midterms. And the tariffing and the terrifying are both really relevant to the economy, and I'll explain. And by the way, to the extent that am I off about what this is about, some coincidence that this eureka moment about the jobs under the Biden administration just happened to come out on the same day when Trump's universal tariffs get enacted. The concern is that the tariffs in the near term, meaning between now and the midterms, may put more pressure on an already slowing job market before they get a chance to boost the job market, which is theoretical. Did you know that the low unemployment number that we keep hearing about is not all good news? The labor market is slowing, and it could be indicating that the economy is slowing. Now, the economy is doing well by most accepted metrics, and most people who measure these things will say that. The economy is doing well, but it does seem to be slowing. Last month, there were only an estimated 73,000 jobs added. Expectation was 100,000. So instead of dealing with why the number's going down, the president did something that's pretty politically savvy. He attacked the number, playing into our collective lack of trust in everything and blaming the counting instead of the reason for the count. Mr. Moore will be on in a moment. He can explain how he sees it, okay? But I don't know what he was saying today exactly. He has new data, but I don't know that he shared the data. And the numbers that he seemed to put out to show how horrible the revisions, the numbers were under Biden, how off they were, seemed to be the sum total of the revisions in the last 2 years of Biden's terms, which would mean it's not really new information. So are revisions wrongness? Because that seems to be the explanation. Is that fair? I say no. Seeing revisions as wrongness is wrong on two levels. First, the reason that they revise the numbers is because they are trying to give, hold it for a second, they are trying to give you an early look before the actual data comes in. Why? Because we want it sooner, so that people can plan, so that the markets can react. And they revise them as the data comes in. So if you wanted to wait longer to have data to make assessments, and you can argue that that might be the right way to do it, then you'd have to wait. But American economic data is seen as the gold standard around the world. It's not that we're bad at this. And the revisions happen pretty much the same way under Democratic and Republican administrations. And by the way, they both tend to play revisions the same way, which is that if the revisions make it better, they say, oh, it's great. And if they make it worse, they're like, these numbers suck. In May and June, the job numbers were revised down by a lot, like over 250,000 jobs. May went from 140,000 jobs to 19,000 jobs. June went from 147,000 jobs to 14,000 jobs. So the president sees an opportunity. Why does this keep happening? Because they suck at their job, not that I suck at mine. And the reason it becomes so interesting to us heading into the midterms is that jobs are really going to be the main area that the tariffs will be measured against. So manufacturing is the dream, right? And you know how I feel about it, all right? There's this assumption that America doesn't make anything, that we don't make. We're the number 2 manufacturing economy in the world. China passed us in recent years. We're number 2. What do you mean we don't make anything? So do we need more? Sure. Anything that helps people get ahead in this country, you should want more of it. I think it's a good ambition for the president. I think it's a great outcome for the country if it happens, but it would take a really long time for the investment and retrenchment and stuff that he's talking about. So that's theoretical. What will be practical is what happens between now and the midterms with the tariffs, and that could be stressful, okay? So the reason we're seeing the numbers go down, especially right now, is not, I argue to you, because they suck at counting. It's because the inputs are up. Manufacturing companies have their costs scaling up because of this pressure. And they are also holding back on investment because they need to have some certainty of the environment. And they can't because of the chaotic nature of the tariffs going up and down and what's happening in the deal and no deal. So, we've had the opposite of clarity. I get the tactic. It may wind up in better deals. We'll have to see. But it is destabilizing. So I argue that attacking the accuracy, what you saw today, is as much about setting the table for comparison on the midterms as it is talking about revisions. And again, I don't know that revisions are a bad thing. Trump's deportation crackdown has also caused labor pressure. This isn't me saying it. This is employers saying it, okay? Unemployment would likely be higher, but we would be in a healthier fiscal economic situation. Why? Because we would have more available labor, and that if you expanded your job market, your manufacturing base, your economic base, you'd have the people there to pick it up. We have a different problem. We don't have enough people to do the jobs that are already open here. So even if the tariffs bring in job creation, you're also draining the available pool of people to do those jobs. There won't be enough people to do the work of the expanded capacity. So the tariffs as a standalone may wind up being a long-term positive. I don't know, we'll see. But combined with the reach and the manner of the deportation program, near term, they can be putting stress on employment numbers. So that was the big moment from today, but it's not being covered the way I'm explaining it to you right now. Now, here's the question. Do I have it right? Is there data that shows something different? Was it put out, and I'm wrong about that? I don't think I am. But are revisions a bad thing? And why did they do this today? I know who knows. Stephen Moore author of Trumponomics. He also has been connected with the Project 2025 administration. I'm glad your communication worked out. I'm sure you would have said that I was censoring you if the shot hadn't worked out. Stephen Moore, thank you for being with us. I don't know that you got to hear any of this. First, the data that you said that you have that nobody else has, did you share the data? Will you share the data?
Absolutely. By the way, I agreed with a lot of what you just said. Not everything, but I agreed with a lot of what you just said about the economy. So I'm going to give you a B today in economics. So look,
it's better than I did in economics.
I did meet with President Trump today, and we did talk a lot about the economy. Look, here's my theory about this. You're right that a lot of the trade turmoil at the beginning of the year probably did hurt the labor market. There were a lot of factories could not get the parts that they needed. There were a lot of manufacturing firms in the same situation, and so there was a lot of havoc and turmoil. But I do believe, and I'm a free trade guy. You know that about me. I believe in free trade. I like this. I think international trade is so important for all countries. But what Trump has been able to do, and you got to admit this, is he's getting some trade deals where he's forcing other countries to lower their tariffs on us. And if he can do that and we can get a fair trade situation, I think that benefits everybody. So that's kind of my take on the economy right now. I'm pretty bullish because we got this tax bill done. The trade bills that are coming forward seem to be pro-America. And what's not to like about that?
The outcomes, right? I'm with you in theory. That if it's good for America, who wouldn't like that? I get it. In fact, I may like it if it's good for America, even if it's not as good for other countries, because I am American. So, let them worry about themselves a little bit, right? It's got to be about proportionality.
I get it.
But one, when do you give us the data that shows that I guess you were counting up the revisions. Are you saying that you have data that shows it's not the aggregate it's the revisions, right?
So I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, just because it's. But what we showed today in our report was that if you take the initial jobs reports that come out every Friday morning, the first Friday of every month, and I've been studying that stuff for 30 years, that's the headline numbers. That's, Chris, the number that everybody pays attention to. And then they get revised in the second month and the third month. And in fact, in the last report that you were just talking about, we had huge revisions downward. Now, I don't think that was any political manipulation. I just don't think they're counting the jobs very well. But what we did in this report was looked at what had happened in 2023 and 2024, Biden's last 2 years in office. And what we found is from the time they made the original estimates of what the jobs were to the time they made the final adjustments, they revised downward by about 1.5 million jobs. That's a big number. That's a big revision. And some people could say, well, gee, that's not just a random error if you have that big of a revision. I'm not making that point. I'm just saying I don't think the numbers are very good, and we need good numbers if we're going to make good economic policy.
Right. But all right, help me with two things. One, I don't really hold you responsible on the first point. And in fact, I respected today. It's not easy to stand next to the President of the United States, period. But it's not easy to stand next to him and, have him say something. You'd be like, well, I don't know that it's intentional, but no matter how it happened, it's incompetent. Good for you for drawing that distinction, because I think that you happen to be right. You don't have any proof that this was intentional or done to deceive, correct?
No.
Okay.
No,
and you haven't even put out the data yet. Right. So you haven't even put out the data yet that you're saying you looked at. So we all got to look at the data for ourselves. Not that I don't trust you.
By the way,
it's just that, I don't trust
hold on,
you.
let me just interrupt you for 1 second, Ben, because that data that I was just talking about with respect to the jobs, that's available to anyone if you want to go back and just count.
No, you said I have data that nobody else has.
So that was related to the other part of this press conference was related to the income data. So just to clarify that.
Gotcha. Okay. So thank you for the clarification. And Stephen showed that income was going up about $1,000 per family, and that's you want to see progress. Yeah. So I don't know that why the president says it's intentional, except that it's a politically savvy thing to say in our current environment. But that's for him to answer for, not you. The second one is that they're not good at the job. I don't have to tell you this. Nobody says that to me. They say that they don't like the way we do the early reports and that there's too much pressure on giving people early information, but that our economic statistics are the gold standard, and the only thing that's made people question that was the reductions in staffing that the Trump administration just made to the people who do the counting, and that they're now having to base it more on estimates than actual data than they used to. So if anything, the counting may get worse. What do you make of that?
So there's an old saying, Chris, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You know, the real issue is whether the numbers they come out with are accurate. And right now they're not. And it's a part of that is not, it has nothing to do with politics. It's the same problem we have with polling that's done, political polling. You know, do you have a direct line service of phone in your house anymore?
No.
No, most people don't. You know, so the way we used to do surveying, calling off on their home phone, well, now they have cell phones. Oftentimes we don't have their numbers. The response rates are much, much worse. And that's why you get these kind of crazy results. Again, I'm not bemeaning anyone. I'm saying we have to do this much better. We have to find new techniques to find out how many jobs were really created over the months. Because look, government policy, employment policy by businesses, all of this stuff is really affected by the, you know, when we want to take a pulse of the economy, Chris, the most important number that comes out every month is the jobs number.
Right. No, I'm with you. It's just that I don't believe that they were less accurate during Biden than they were during the Trump administration before it, or the Obama administration before that, or that they are right now.
I do. And the reason I do is just I think the numbers have gotten worse and worse over time. And again, I'm not making a political point. I think they were worse under Trump than they were under Obama. I think they were worse under Obama than Bush. In other words, I'm saying a whole revamp of, by the way, you know, Trump said today he wants to redo the census. I'm all for that. I think the census, the 2020 census was one of the worst censuses we've ever taken, partly because of COVID, partly because it did become political in a lot of states. And so let's get honest numbers.
Well, did he say that he wanted to change how we count or who we count? Didn't he say that he doesn't want to count non-citizens?
He does. He wants to count he wants to not count illegal immigrants.
Oh, I thought he said non-citizens, because they're more than illegal immigrants. Right?
I don't remember.
But I'm just saying, look, again, I get the politics of it. I think the politics are savvy. I think you have some wood to chop. One, you got to make the case for people that this can be done better, and that it's worth looking at the last 2 years of the Biden administration and not just looking at them right now. Because if we want to look at bad revisions downwards, you've got them on your watch right now. We don't need to look back at Biden. That's my point. But Stephen, I appreciate the case you're making, and I appreciate you coming on here to make it. It's great for my audience to have access for the people who are making the news when they're making it. So thank you for coming on.
Love coming on yourself, Chris. Anytime. You got me when you need me.
Take care, and thank you for the B. That's better than I did in college. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Now, South Park last night has become must-watch TV. And I'm not saying that because they're making fun of the president's administration. That's what happens to an administration. They become the target. But it is so interesting how they're playing on what's happening in our cultural dialogue about immigration. And they were playing with who ICE is hiring and how. And I wanted to bring in Tom Homan to get his take on the state of play with deportations and this big recruitment bump they're getting. What does he think it's about? All right, so Homeland Security was the target of South Park's really viciously funny parody. This was an interesting angle because it's something I wanted to talk about Homan about, and he's not going to see it the way the South Park guys did. But the idea that they are now hiring a lot of ICE agents. Now, I get what's been going on the left, and I get why. I have been no fan of the reach of deportation efforts, while we have to all acknowledge that in this last election, the country voted clearly that they wanted more enforcement of immigration laws. So how are we to see this boost of people wanting to join ICE, and what is the future of what we see from ICE? The man who puts the policy in effect, which means he doesn't always get to design it, but he always executes it, border czar Tom Homan. It's good to have you here, Tom. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
So South Park is like a very high cultural level. Have you ever had a more cherished credential in your pedigree than being on there? Maybe if they asked you to host Saturday Night Live.
Look, I think the South Park parody, I guess you call it, was, look, it's in bad form, especially right now. I know the secretary announced today we're up over 830% increase on assaults on ICE agents. Now we're up over 1,000%. It's just you know, the rhetoric against ICE continues, and to make a joke out of ICE agents and what they do, and it's just. For that small percentage on the left, you know, a lot of the left don't like what ICE does, but there's a small percentage that take it too far, and whether it's throwing Molotov cocktails or threatening ICE agents or putting hands on ICE agents, they feel emboldened the more and more they see this bad rhetoric coming out. So I thought the parody was just in bad form, and certainly bad timing.
Because of what's going on in the country. You and I have talked about it. We cover it here. Should be zero tolerance as far as I'm concerned. I get why people think it's menacing for men and women to have masks on, but if you're doxing their families, I mean, you know, what do you expect? They're all willing to put their lives on the line on first responders. We've all seen it. But they don't put their families' lives on the line. And I don't think it's fair to expect them to do otherwise. Now, here's the reverse metric. What do you know about recruitment at ICE?
Look, you know, I said, you know, over 3 months, no longer now. It's actually right after Trump took the Oval Office. I literally had I had a LinkedIn account, right? I had to shut it down because I just got thousands and thousands of contacts. I want to be an ICE agent. I want to be a Border Patrol agent. I retired. I want to come back. I just got out of the military. I would love to work for ICE or Border Patrol. Retired guys out of the military, police officers, retired officers, retired military, retired Border Patrol agents, retired ICE agents. I literally had to shut it down because I was getting thousands. So we had a lot of people willing to step up and do this job, even though it's a dangerous job, very controversial job, as you know. But there's no lack of interest in coming back and working for Border Patrol or ICE. Last month, Border Patrol had a record number of recruiting numbers, the highest the agency's ever seen. So there's no shortage of people that want to come and join the ranks.
What do you think it's about?
Pardon me?
What do you think it's about? Why do you think there's a bump in recruitment?
I actually think there's a lot of American people out there that got sick and tired of the last 4 years. Every day you turn the TV on, there are literally thousands of illegal aliens coming to the border, literally thousands of illegal aliens being released into the United States in violation of federal law, thousands coming in through the airports, through the CHNV program, Cuba, Nicaragua, Haiti, Venezuela, and most of those people weren't even coming from those countries. Thousands coming through a port of entry on CBP One app. And I think the American people has got sick and tired of the Border Patrol not being able to do their job, or ICE not being able to do their job. I think the reason there's so much shock from the left is before 4 years, ICE wasn't able to do their job because Secretary Mayorkas told ICE, you can't arrest somebody for simply being here illegally. They got to be convicted of a serious crime. So ICE wasn't doing their job. Border Patrol, I was on the border a dozen times. I talked to hundreds of Border Patrol agents. They felt like Uber drivers. They felt like tourist agents because they weren't enforcing the law. They're processing somebody, taking them to the airport. They get a free airline ticket to the city of their choice, get a free hotel room, get 3 meals a day, get free medical care. So I think the American people are fed up. You know, illegal aliens in New York City in a hotel room at $500 a night while we got homeless veterans on the street. I think the American people got fed up, and now that President Trump's back in office, they want to come in and help fix a broken system.
Let me ask you something. And again, for the people at home, it's not like Tom's my uncle, but he does not set the parameters of all policy. He gets given it and he puts it and he executes it. So we had talked last time about whether or not there was overreach and what the priorities were in the context of what the president had said, which is that he was getting contacted by major employers who were saying they needed these people. Now we see, again, that community, specifically farms, saying productivity has dropped because of psychology surrounding potential raids and the people who've been taken by raids. Have you heard anything about adjusting policy to make more discerning choices about what type of illegal entrants are the focus?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the president's policy, because I'm reading a lot of media stories that are saying most of the people ICE arrests are not criminals. Most of the people in ICE detention aren't criminals. And that's just false. Every morning, the first thing I do is look at over 20 pages of data for the last 24 hours. And the last time I looked at the data, which was this morning, 68.7%, so 70% of everybody we arrest is a criminal. Fact. Who are the other 30%? A lot of them are significant threats to like the 300 Iranians we arrested in the last couple of weeks. They might not have a criminal history, but they're a national security threat. So we got to take them in custody, take them off the street. A lot of them are gang members, and as you know, many gang members don't have a criminal history, but they're gang members. They're a threat to the community. And who are the rest of them? Many of them are final orders. These are people who had due process at great taxpayer expense. They were ordered removed by a federal judge and didn't leave, so they became a fugitive. We have to execute those orders. That is our job. And if we don't, we send a message to the whole world: enter the country legally. It's a crime. Don't worry about it. Show up in court or don't show up in court. Get an order removal. Don't worry about it. No one's looking for you. Well, that's not a message we can send to the whole world. So ICE is doing exactly what President Trump says they're doing. 70% of them are criminals. Then the rest are national security threats and final orders, first of all. But the second of all, on the farms, I'm not going to get ahead of the president on this, but the president's been pretty clear. He wants to do something for the farms. So, I'll see what comes out of that. I know there's people having discussions at the White House, so we'll see what comes out. But I think the president's been clear. He's looking how can he help the farms. So we'll see what comes out of it.
All right. Mr. Homan, thank you for coming on to explain the job. I appreciate you taking the opportunity.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate you.
All right, take care. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. Now, you know who wants to be an ICE agent? Superman Dean Cain. Why? I think that, yeah, look, Dean's a special guy. He's a celebrity, sure. But I also think he reflects a sentiment I see a lot of when it comes to what you want to do for your country. So let's hear it from him. Why did Dean Cain want to join ICE? Dean Cain has had a very full life and has plenty to do, I'm sure. Why would he be drawn to do the work of ICE? Let's ask him. Dean Cain, thank you for joining me, and thank you for wanting to raise awareness to help the country.
I'm honored to be here, Chris. It's great to finally get to talk to you, sort of face to face. It's a pleasure, and I'm glad to see you had Steve Moore on and Tom Homan and a wide range of people. So it's wonderful, and I look forward to this.
So why ICE, and what do you want to do, and what do you want people to know?
I'm standing up for ICE, and the reason I'm going to join ICE and be an honorary ICE officer is because they're being vilified right now horribly. At the same time, like years ago when I joined the police force, I'm a sworn deputy sheriff in Frederick County, Virginia. I'm a reserve police officer in Pocatello, Idaho, because people were talking about defunding the police, which to me is insanity. Right now, people are doxing ICE agents. They're going after them. They're attacking them for doing the job that they're supposed to do, that they were hired to do. And people are just attacking them left and right. They're there to protect American citizens. That's what I want to do. And I want to stand shoulder to shoulder with these ICE agents and let people know these are wonderful, fantastic American people. They're mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers. And to attack them and or their families, and you mentioned it earlier, is absolutely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get it. There are often different ways to see things. I talk to Tom Homan often about the reach of the policy, and he gets to make his case about that he believes that the number reflects a very high threat threshold. I worry about overreach and the effect on economies and communities. But beating up on the people enforcing the law doesn't make sense. How do you separate your partisan feelings as a Trump supporter with your patriotic feelings in this instance?
Well, it's the law. You know, Congress makes immigration law, and ICE enforces that law. So if they want to change the law, change the law. Excuse me. You look at our immigration system. We accept more than 1 million legal immigrants every year. That's more than the next 3 or 4 countries combined. America is hugely immigrant friendly, and we should be. Bring in immigrants, bring them in, vet them, have them come here and have them assimilate. That's a wonderful part of America. And people want to be here because it is the land of the free and the home of the brave and the land of opportunity. And that's because of our Constitution. So these men and women who step up and do this, that gentleman there, those agents don't need to be doxxed for doing their job. They're not trying to be cruel to people. These are wonderful, wonderful people, but they're being vilified and turned into these awful, people call them Gestapo and things like that, which is insane.
Look, I understand your point, and of course you go case by case. You know, you show me a case of them doing the wrong thing the wrong way, there you go. But to blame everybody is always a problem, and I've said many times the 3 dumbest words that have come out of a Democrat's mouth in the last 25 years is defund the police. That was as dumb a thing for their constituency as they could have said, and they're still living it down. What do you make of the reciprocal argument that the president has addressed, Dean, a couple of times? I think he's working through what to do on it, which is not all people who enter illegally are the same. OK, you get your gangbangers, your drug pushers, your traffickers, your people who don't want to do it the right way. And then you have people who are just desperate and they thought this was the only way and they come here and they do everything right. So the president gets outreach from farmers and large-scale employers and says, you're killing us. I need these people. They're good people. They're part of our communities. They didn't come here the right way, but they've done everything the right way since they came the wrong way. He says, we got to do something for them. He gets pushback, and it's gone quiet since then. Do you think that the president would be wrong to modify, to accommodate that not everyone who comes in the wrong way is the same?
Well, no, I don't think that's crazy, but I don't know if that's really the president's position. I don't know that he can do that. That's Congress, and Congress should get to work. If they put something together that made sense, I'm sure the president would sign it. President Trump he's a businessman. He wants this economy to hum. And if that's a problem for us, it should be addressed by the lawmakers. And again, that's Congress. President Trump is reasonable. He makes his techniques about going about things is maybe different than most of us have seen before, but he gets results, and I think he's going to get results in this instance. And again, my reason for stepping up is to stand with these Americans who are doing the work they're supposed to be doing and stand shoulder to shoulder with them. These are real American heroes, and it's dangerous. Like Tom Homan said just a moment ago, the attacks on these agents are up over 1,000%. So I think President Trump will make a deal, find something that makes it palatable for the farmers. But, you can't be in any other country on this planet. And I've had a home in Spain for over 20-something years and not follow the immigration laws. You will be penalized or you'll be sent back. In this instance here in the United States, 70%, according to Tom Homan, 70% of the illegals arrested by ICE have they're convicted criminals, or they have pending charges, or they're national security threats. That's even higher than 70%. So I think they're doing the right thing. It's just a matter of amending this as we move along.
Mm-hmm. Dean Cain, appreciate you laying out the case and the commitment. Thank you for being on the show.
Cheers, Chris. Thanks.
All right, 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Now, we're talking about immigrants all the time as if that was our major crime issue. It isn't. Did you hear? You know who the problem is in this country? It's not people who aren't supposed to be here. It's the citizens here. We are killing ourselves and we're beating ourselves silly. You see what just happened in Cincinnati? Brawl, still being used for political advantage, and I get it. The woman at the center of it was beaten unconscious. Why? What has this been about? She just spoke out to NewsNation. How did she get involved? And why was she so surprised by the police? Hear it from her. So what was this about? What happens in Cincinnati? Was this just stupid people doing stupid things, drunk? Or is it a sign of a culture of acceptance, of lawlessness? One thing we know is the incident's being used for political advantage, even if we haven't gotten to the bottom of what it was about. The woman who definitely has a right to speak out about it is the one who was beaten unconscious on camera. And she is speaking out to NewsNation investigative correspondent Rich McHugh. It's a big interview at the right time, and he joins me with Ohio's Crown Prince, Geraldo Rivera. Geraldo, thank you for joining me tonight, giving us some hometown perspective on this. Rich, what do you got?
So, Chris, you laid it out. You know, ever since this video went viral of this beating, the woman at the center of it, who came within an inch of her life, we've all wanted to know, her perspective on it. And now she's speaking out in her own words. And I got to say, this interview is the most gut-wrenching interview I've been a part of. This is raw, emotional, and honest. And let's hear it in her own words.
I kept thinking the police would show up, and kept waiting and waiting while watching them get kicked and stomped. I could hear the victims laying on the ground begging for help. And one of them specifically had said, "Please God, someone help me, please God," crying out to God. And I knew that might be his last words. And I wasn't gonna stand there and just watch him die and then say, well, there's nothing I could have done about it. I remember the police coming, and I was very, I was happy. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. We're gonna be saved. And it was one police car, 2 officers, very short with us, kind of.
Short with you?
Yeah. They were just kind of blowing us off. I'm like, you guys don't care. They didn't call for backup. They didn't call an ambulance. And they just acted like we were just some little hoodlums, and they were gonna talk to us to appease us, but not really do anything.
Holly says there was one call to 911, not from onlookers, but from a victim who had kind of gotten away and hid behind cars. She said police did not take her statement that night. And to this date, she still hasn't even heard from the chief of police or the mayor, Chris. An absolute disgrace here.
Geraldo, what do you hear from people about what this was?
Well, it seems it's like a white people's Rodney King, Chris. First of all, excellent job of reporting. It was clearly a racial incident. These black thugs went wild on these the whiteys that dared to come in to their neighborhood. Maybe someone said something or other, and it unleashed the fury. I think to dance around it and make it something other than what it is. This is what it was. It was black people on white victims, just like it was black victims with white cops at Rodney King. There's a million examples you can, I think the reason it's news is because in this case the victim is the white and the perpetrator is black. If it was,
well, I think that's the reason that it's not news. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, Geraldo.
Well, I was going to say,
I think
if it were the other way
I got to
around.
tell you, I've seen maybe a handful of stories on this situation. If you did it the other way around, then how many did I see?
I absolutely agree with you. If it had been black people being victimized, the usual pattern, you would have had all of the civil rights groups engaged. You would have had the corporate grievance, feelings that we have engaged. It would have been a whole mass of organized resistance that would have been engaged. But because it is unusual, what we're seeing, because it's not what you usually hear, I think that's why people are stunned by it. And the fact that no one called 911, the fact that no one tried to intervene. I've been in plenty of street fights in my life. You don't let women get kicked in the face unless you have something very bitter going on, unless you're really very angry unless you got, it was horrifying to me. And I think that Cincinnati is going to be a long time healing. It's a city, as you know, right on the Ohio River. It's the Mason-Dixon line. It's a big role in the Civil War, from Civil War to civil rights. It's tried to balance the race thing. But obviously what you saw here was a kind of a venting of resentments, or, I don't want to be an amateur shrink, but.
Well, whatever it was, it didn't get enough attention as far as I'm concerned if we want to examine society through crime, as we often do. And, to your point about it being a female, that matters to me also. And Rich, the idea of her perspective, what I think is so powerful about your interview with her is that she's talking through things that she was feeling, which isn't easy in a traumatic experience. But the videoing also, that has become so prevalent. What was her take on that?
She said, look, the fact that people were videoing this and not calling 911, that was upsetting to her. And watching through the videos, hearing them kind of gleefully, when she said she watched herself beaten and someone was kind of gleefully being laughing about it, she said that made her very angry. It's really unsettling to her, this whole thing. And she's really not doing too well.
Listen, I totally understand it. I'm sure the physical aspects are the least of it. All right, I got to jump. Fellas, thank you very much for giving me insight into this. Rich, great interview. Geraldo, as always, appreciate the wisdom. We'll be right back. Leland Vittert, right now.
Great reporting by Rich McHugh. We'll have a little bit more of it later, and I thought your take with Geraldo was perfect.
Oh, thank you, bud. Appreciate it. Look forward to the show.